Welcome to the 11th Annual South Bronx Folk Festival. Como ustedes saben, el COVID-19, as you know, the COVID-19 has changed the way we gather, and this year we are in a virtual platform. Este año estamos haciéndolo virtualmente para todos ustedes. As usual, we will continue celebrating the Puerto Rican Heritage Month, highlighting the cultural diversity in our community. Y como de costumbre, vamos a seguir celebrando nuestra cultura puertorriqueña, no importa que un virus nos ataque. Nosotros somos más que eso y nuestra cultura vale más que todo eso. Welcome y disfruten de Puerto Rico. ¡Que viva Puerto Rico!
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this 11th Annual South Bronx Folk Festival. My name is Yasmar Cruz. I am the director of Danzartes, and I am honored to be here with you. Introducing this first panel, Connecting the Roots of Traditional Dance and Spirituality. But before we begin, and I introduce you my amazing and talented guest for the night, I would love to take a moment to honor our dear friend and member of Danza Fiesta, which you'll see in a little bit in the video, Raul Wilson. May his spirit be lifted and shining down upon us. May we celebrate his life, his talent, and all the beautiful gifts that he shared with us. To you, Raul, this first panel is dedicated. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Manuela Arciniegas and Dr. Drum, who are going to be my panelists for the night. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm so glad that you accepted this invitation and super excited to dive into the conversation tonight. So I would love to give you a little bit of the framework behind this panel, the intention behind this panel. It was actually created many years ago while I was still studying at the University of Puerto Rico, where I did a research about African dances and religions. And today, with that framework in mind, I'm gonna give you a quote from John S. MBT, which is gonna give us a little bit of the concept that I'm using for spirituality in this particular panel. So in his book, Introduction to African Religion, he states the following: through music, singing, and dancing, people are able to participate emotionally and physically in the act of worship. Now, considering that traditional dances and the practice of this as an activity that enriches the spirit, how does practicing traditional dances have influenced your life and your spirit? And can we start with Manuela?
Sure. So thank you once again for the invitation, Yasmar. What an honor to be with you. My name is Manuela Ciniegas. I'm the director of Legacy Women. We are an all-women's drum and dance troupe that plays Afro-Dominican and Afro-Puerto Rican roots drum music, secular and religious. I think what I'll start with is the fact that I am a student, and I really encountered these traditions in New York City from elders, cultural workers, scholars, and healers. And the first thing I realized about Afro-Puerto Rican bomba and Afro-Dominican palo or salve or congos, which were the dances that I was exposed to, bambula, sarandunga, from really important leaders in our community, is that I did not, and I was not oriented to my cultural identity as a person of African descent. So the first thing that these dances and drumming traditions did for me was help me understand who I was and where I come from. It was the first time I realized and really had a solid connection to my African identity. It was the first time I learned about the history of who we are, where we came from, why were Africans brought to the Americas, and how did our cultures endure. So that was the very first thing. And I think for me, that was actually a re-education. It was not something I learned in school, as many young people in New York maybe don't have access to, because it was an erased history. We live in a community and a country that is a product of colonialism and white supremacy, where the history of the original people of this land, Native people, has been erased, of African people is erased or diminished, to painting people just as enslaved folks. So for me, the spirituality and the freedom that I encountered was a reorientation, a redefinition of who I am, what is my power, what is my legacy, who are my ancestors. That was all communicated through the dances. In the dances of Bomba, as you know, there's postures that have to do with a particular sense of self-respect, power, and defiance. Estas posturas, these postures, are actually about speaking back to the slavery and the oppression that our people have endured in this continent. So for me, knowing myself and becoming myself was a spiritual act. It was an act of reclaiming my personhood and who I am, and really stepping into a liberated body. And it took work. Through the dance, we work on becoming liberated, right? And I think knowing how I feel about that and getting to express power in a Black body was a new thing for me. I did it growing up in the Bronx through hip hop, and I didn't know that a lot of the same postures and movements existed and actually came from African-derived traditional dances, right? The rhythms, the percussion, the patterns of rhythms, that all comes from our African cultural heritage. And so being able to make that connection for me was freeing. It was freeing. And I think, what is the practice of spirituality but knowing yourself and creating your relationship with the environment and the people around you? And African-derived dances, whether you call them religious or spiritual or secular, in fact, are all about creating a connection to yourself and to what is you in the world, the natural elements, the other people in your community. That's why a lot of the dances were required group participation. And there was also the ability to be enmeshed in community, but also be deep within yourself and touch the spiritual world inside you, touch the power beyond who you are as a human, touch the spirit, touch the ancestors, touch what you can't see. And we are like, that's our culture, right? We're like really aware of all of the things, the totality, the present, the past. In Bomba, we sing a lot to ancestors, so we don't forget our lineage. We don't forget who isn't physically in front of us. In the Congo's tradition of the Dominican Republic, we dance in partnership, and it is courtship, and it's fun, but the songs are actually deeply spiritual. So the body, freeing the body, connecting to a belief system, connecting to elders, connecting to ancestors, connecting to nature, singing to storms and hurricanes, singing to fire. It's like through our dance and our music, which is hand in hand, we become a part of a whole. So I think that for me was how entering Afro-derived traditions and practices really helped me deepen my knowledge of my own spirit and be connected to myself, my community, and my lineage.
Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful, and it's so true, right? Because a lot of times we are not raised with those traditions, and we get to learn them later in life. And I would love to have a take on that for Dr. Trump.
Yeah. I mean, this is incredible. Listening to you, Manuela, it just all connects with the whole experience, because I relate to a lot of what you're saying, and I think that that this is the era that we're in, and I'm just learning about it now, in the sense of looking at it as narratives that has built up to this point in time. That you know, what I kind of missed out growing up and seeing it around me, and how when we talk about spirituality and how I grew up with that all around me, and yet not being active in it. And so, when I saw Bomba, it's like, it seems like it all came to me at that one time. What I was seeing was actually more about what I was feeling. And so releasing that whole experience of trying to understand what I'm feeling, played a big role. And I think that for me was like, that was my first beginning of connecting with spirituality. And so that whole experience was inspired through through a dance with the drum, with the song, and so seeing that for the first time, how it impacted me, it actually just transformed my whole life. And so, now I'm getting to appreciate the narratives that were there before me, because it's like, now, I'm getting, I'm learning to see it in a different way. And that whole experience that I'm getting from it, it's allowing me to kind of like, it's a reality. It's a reality for me now, and so that reality, it's keeping me, I don't know how you say it, but it's like, I feel like I'm in another dimension. And it feels like it just feels good, man. And I'm very grateful for that. And so yeah, and just like I think what Manuela said, when something that came later on in my life, understanding and how it connected to my African roots, that gave me a better understanding of who I am, and that itself right there, So in that era where, instead of like me growing up, being cultivated as a child, no, now as an adult, I'm being educated through this whole experience. And so now it's like, whereas maybe at one time Bomba may seem like, it was a musical piece, and now it's like, I look at it as an intellectual, experience, because it has actually, it lifted me up to another dimension of thought. And that thought, I don't think it would have been possible if it was not for this experience with the Bomba. And so that's evolving right now as I'm talking to you. So that spirituality is so real, and genuine in this practice of culture. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Jose. And we're gonna take a look at a video that actually embodies that, right? We're gonna see the younger generation and the more older generation, and how there's that exchange of not only the dance, but also the spirituality, the movement, the connection, the creation of community, and in a sense of passing on, right? They open up the space so the new generations can learn and can really nurture from that. So we're gonna be taking a look at Seis de la Montaña, and it's the video that was used to the opening of the 60th annual Puerto Rican Day Parade. Here we go.
Y alumbra nuevos caminos que va inundando los montes, los senderos campesinos. Soy el fruto del futuro, la semilla del mañana, sembrada en estiércol puro de mi tierra bonita. Soy un pescador de sueños, buscando más de espumas, de caracolas, de arenas, de sirenas y de luna, de estrellas y de horizonte, sigo pone mi fortuna. Soy gaviota navegante y astronauta de la bruma. Soy el pan y la levadura que alimenta la esperanza del hombre puertorriqueño, el despertar de mi patria. Traigo sangre borinqueña, soy hija de las palmeras, de los campos y los ríos, y del cantar del corrido, de valles y cafetales, de caña, azúcar y piña, de guayaba y mamposteales, de tembleque y de maíz.
Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana. Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana.
La luz radiante del sol resplandece la sabana y mi gatito le canta a mi tierra soberana.
Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana. Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana.
El jíbaro se levanta a las 5 de la mañana para cultivar su tierra, esa tierra borincana.
Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana. Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana.
Ese grupo danza fiesta que viene de Nueva York, con sabor de Puerto Rico, su cultura y tradición.
Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana. Ya amaneció, ay qué linda la mañana. Ay qué linda la mañana.
And just watching the video really transported me to that moment. And for me, it is a sense of joy, of freedom, of transcending space, right? And the dance, the music, and sharing with everyone else who was there. I know that we're all, Manuela and Dr. Drum, teachers, and we all teach younger generations. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how do you think that teaching these dances influences younger generations and creates that emotional connection beyond the physical space?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I wanted to say earlier is that, spirituality as we define it, when we look at African-derived traditions, everything is spiritual. There's no division between religion and spirit and then regular life, right? The way we talk, the food we eat, the way we dress is imbued with spirit. And so that's the one thing I'll say about African-derived traditions. It's super important to know that it's not a separate thing that happens over here. So when Dr. Jim was talking earlier about his understanding his feelings and the evolution of his thoughts and his consciousness and moving at another level, that is the evolution of a spirit, of a soul. And so, what happens when you're in a group and you're a young person, I think is really powerful, because oftentimes, our kids are growing up in a community that prioritizes individuality. It does not prioritize group work. It does not create collective activities and a lot of interaction, right? It also makes it harder to have transfer of knowledge across generations, right? Oftentimes our young people are raised that they might have deep connections to their grandmother or their mom, let's say, or an auntie or an uncle, but they don't see elders as a whole category of people that have something to share with them, right? And they also see that their elders don't live the values that they talk about. So they disconnect and say, you're not really about what you say. I think through dance, we start to see what we can learn from each other. And I think that that's really powerful. So the opportunity for emotional connection is absolutely needed. This individualistic society has the highest rates of depression. With COVID, isolation, anxiety, all of the stressors have only increased. And so dance is really important to make sure that people feel connected to each other, that people feel like a part of a group, a part of a whole, and that people have tools to process what they're feeling so that they don't hurt themselves, so that they don't feel isolated and they don't fall off the map of a community. Because it's only through collective work and connection that we can actually create things. No one's an island unto themselves. How does it transcend beyond the physical space? Like you said it yourself, the feeling of joy. Helping model and create spaces for people to feel joy in their bodies, whether it's traditional, whether it's through choreography, whether it's folklore, whether it's free. Do what you feel. It's the circle. We're going to hold it. Bring everything you got. There are no rules. Whatever that space is, people need that. People need a place to be embodied and to emit and to process and to channel and to create new things in their body, because it's got to be beyond the screen and the Zoom and the phone and your eyeballs and your fingers. Like there's a bigger life than that. So, for me, teaching kids, it was actually the way I learned about my role in a community, my role in the community and my responsibility to people outside of me. And it came from a place of deep love, because I didn't have that when I was little. There was nobody of my culture teaching me my culture in the schools, in communities. I didn't find it till I was 16 was the first time I heard bomba, and it changed my life. I felt a thing that I could not name, and that was the beginning of a beautiful journey. So it really does transcend, and I think people who teach with love and also with a deep respect for the lineage and the tradition and the hard work and the science, really, our culture is as much scientific as it is, free. It's not just get in the circle and do whatever. There's methodology, there's nuance, there's technique, and it's a technique that you can only be taught by other masters and other folks. And you don't just pick it up online, or you don't just pick it up after a day. You actually have to spend a long time, a lifetime dedicated, and really take care of those teachers who share it with you, because they gave up a lot to teach you something that was illegal, that was not celebrated, that's been taboo, that has not always put food on the table, and came at a great sacrifice. So I really appreciate and love the teachers of our tradition. And I want to give a shout out to an elder that we just lost recently, Benny Ayala, El Maestro Benny Ayala, who was a tremendous bomba singer and elder, and really, like, at La Casita de Chema, taught me a lot. And he just passed away a day ago. So I want to shout him out and just connect to the love for our teachers and for our young people. That's possible when you take up the banner of sharing these traditions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Manuela, for those beautiful words. And yes, definitely, completely. The honoring, the passing on. And I love that you mentioned the word technique, because a lot of people have this misconception that some of the African-derived dances or practices don't have that technique in there, and it does, and they do. And to be able to learn from a person who's been practicing this for so many years, the technique is there and it's being passed down. And as you mentioned, it's something that you're not gonna learn through the internet. You're not gonna learn in a semester or in a year. It definitely takes time. And I would love to hear from Dr. Drum on this second question.
No, I think we're in a great era when it comes to the teaching part, right? I think that the narrative that we're on today, when we're talking about this experience, is something like, for example, I'm the only one in my family doing this. So, so of course I was not raised with this at all. And so, growing up, and before hip hop became hip hop, I used to even have my own dance crew back then, so it was interesting that, when I was doing that, I was not involved with elderly people. It was just us, the block. And And so this today, through this whole experience with bomba and then passing it on to the younger ones, it's for me, I think it's great because, I didn't get to grow up with that. And so here they are getting it, I got it when I was 40 years old. Now they got it when they were 7 or 8 years old. And I think that this whole era is really, we're learning more about something that maybe I think that because of, we're on a different level of education, that we're able to, we're seeing things that we didn't see before. Like I have this thing called the healing dome, right? And so, and it all came out of an experience that, COVID is here and there's a lot going on, and I was at a point where, you sacrifice so much for your drum, for this culture, and then now, there's this, pandemic, and now I feel like this is my medicine. This is my protector, my drug, and so exploring that through this, through this time wasn't that simple, and it just, I'm reaching in, and then I'm just learning about, that, the actual frequency of that bomba drum is actually transmitting from my brain to my body. And now I'm connecting it. I'm seeing, the science behind bomba. It's like, wow, this is very important. And, and I think that, that we have a lot to offer to science when it comes to what we're doing through our music, and how our drums really play a big role, and keeping that connection and keeping us educated. And so the experience of just, being able to pass it on to a younger generation, but at the same time, we get to also, the elderly people also get to see something, and they're also learning from this experience where now it's intergenerational. That now we're in an era where when you're doing bomba, it's like, it doesn't matter how old you are, we're all in this same circle together. And I think that experience is beautiful. And so I appreciate that. And so this is how powerful, what's behind our music. The spirituality of that music is really, transcends, and it draws us together. It really does. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
It definitely does. Thank you so much, Dr. Drum. It definitely does. And I would love to share that I met Manuela many years ago. And then I met Dr. Drum more recent. And it was in those spaces of freedom, right? In the spaces of creating the space for our music, our tradition, and the love felt there. And it kept growing, and it brought us together, right? To this conversation that we're having right now. And in light of that, I know you've already shared how these practices have influenced your life, but I would like to take a look at how, as a group, right, or as an artistic director of a group, as both of you are, the process of passing down the traditions, is there a specific or particular way that you decide to pass it down? Is there something that stays only for when it's practicing in the community versus presenting it on stage? How is that process for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started Legacy Women when we really, it was the second evolution of work that we started when we made our first all-women's group. The first all-women's group we made in New York was called Yaya. It was around 2003, I think. And it was a mixed group of Puerto Rican, Dominican, and some other nationalities mixed up in there. And it was because we wanted to play. We wanted to sing our own songs. We didn't just want to dance. We didn't just want to sing coro. We wanted to have a more pronounced role and express our feelings, our ideas, our creativity in different roles. And so through the support of some of our brothers in the community, like Alex Lasalle, Alberto Tito Cepeda Ibae, one of our elders who played with Lo Planero de la 21, and Georgie Vasquez, and a bunch of other really phenomenal people who helped support us, we started making music. And so women, as we are in all of our lives and communities, holding multiple roles, Yaya had its run where we presented our first few performances and really played for a few years, writing our own songs. Then we incorporated Dominican Salve. And then we used it also as a healing space. We would go to the river and really work through emotional challenges and talk and provide support to each other and use the music and the dance as a medicine by creating things that were alternative ideas about how to solve our problems, alternative realities for women that were spaces to talk back to oppression and the challenges we were facing and give voice to what we wished for, give voice to affirm who we really were in light of these challenges through migration, gender oppression, poverty, all the things that we were writing and singing about. Move forward to legacy women, I realized that there needed to be a second generation and a third generation and many, many more generations of women who could have a space to learn. So we started with drum cyphers where we were just playing and teaching women. And then eventually we cemented this group, Legacy Women. And that group also, when I started it, incorporated palos, which was also the first time that you saw all women groups standing up to play palos. Women did play that drum in DR, rarely, como jugando, like on the side, but never on a stage. And I think the fact that we put it on the stage and we made it public was an affirmation that women can take on any aspect of cultural practice so long as it's embraced and supported by that particular community. And even in a cultural setting, you know, we could play bata, but we would never dare play bata in a ceremonial context because that tradition does not create that space, right? And we honor and respect tradition, but we also push boundaries in public art, right? And so when we did that, that was like a way of like, you know, creating spaces and showing other women. And from there, I've met many women who have their own women's groups in Chicago and in Puerto Rico, in the Bay Area. And they said, you know, the first time we saw it was Yaya with Legacy Women, and that has inspired more women to do it. We're not out here trying to be like, you know, the most phenomenal Grammy nominated. For us, the stamp of approval is from when people come to our performances and feel that love, feel that freedom, feel that energy, feel that authentic, humble, like pull of our spirit. We can do that on a stage, but when we play for healing, for social justice, there's a different level of like fire and commitment we bring to those spaces because we're playing. And a lot of us are actually practitioners of African-derived belief systems. When we play, we're bringing all of our people, seen and unseen. We're bringing all of our energy, our ancestors, our Orisha, like that walks with us. So, and then we play with a singular intention of declaring justice, of creating healing for the people in that room. That has a whole nother vibration. It just happens naturally. That's how these women are badasses. That's how.
Okay, this for the night panel.
Somebody bleep that. But that's when you play with intention, because really African-derived traditions, culture is about intention. That is the power. And when you're clear about what your intention is, and you honor everything in the methodology that was left to you, and you make it relevant to this contemporary context, you can continue to provide our people with the technology we need to stay free. Because remember, this was illegal, but the fact that we still do it in some places is because it works. It actually supports and helps and heals people. And it is super sophisticated. And that is what the work is, to make sure we don't interrupt that cycle of passing it on. And we are clear that the intention is to pass this technology to the next generation. So that's some of the differences about how we show up, what songs we sing, who we're singing to when we sing, what are we trying to do when we're singing and dancing. All of that comes into play.
Thank you, Manuela. And yes, when you're clear with your intention and where you're going, that's your power, right? Nobody can take that away from you, especially if you're coming down with everything that walks with you, everything that was here before you, and that will be here and stay here after you're gone. So, Dr. Drum, tell us, what is your
Well, I mean, well, I'll tell you this first. I have to mention that I say this because I was around when Yaya was, on the rise when he started, and that was like the biggest thing that was happening in New York City because that was the first that I've ever seen that, so it like today you had to be there. Yeah, you had to be there, right? Because that was not heard of. But when that came up, when that happened, that was not heard of. And so, watching my brother being the primo player, that was a big deal. It was a very, very big deal. And so, of course, and I think that, again, it was like, it just felt like something, left. Right, and then, but it did it. Actually, that narrative there, actually, others were able to continue and build on that, and saw possibilities. And now you look around women drumming, and it's all there now. It seems like it's just that we're in a system now that is just it just happens, but it didn't happen like that. It was really So it took a particular, movement to create that, to start that ball rolling, is what I'm saying, right? And so, I definitely, I've always been like that picture in my head at the beginning of that, keeping it real, that presentation of these ladies that really giving it all and reviving giving pride to something that for years and even still today is oppressed. It's kind of marginalized when you think about it. Bomba is always getting something, like for example, even with Bombayo when we're performing, like, I hate going on the stage, like it just takes away from what I like to do, right? And so, but the funny thing is that, many times there was, the microphone was not working or something was always going wrong, that we were kind of like, okay, we're going to play here. We're going to do it right here on the ground, And so that was, for me, that's what I prefer that anyway, but it was just that I think that whole experience, for us, it was like, I had these youth, these children, but we're on the same page when it comes to that we're all doing this together and we're all learning this together. And so, yeah, I just had, I was the adult in the group, but we were actually doing, we all wanted this, the same way, right? And so it was fun. It was a lot of fun breaking those barriers and just advocate for yourself, standing up for yourself. But, I think that that's the other thing that was happening with Bomba. And I think, most other people would agree when they're doing Bomba. It's like, you're not just doing Bomba, you're fighting for something, that that most people don't understand it, and it's almost like, when we're going to perform somewhere and the DJ blasting this music so loud, and then we got to come and perform right behind that, that loud volume, bass and all that. It's just, it just shows that you got to work so hard to do something, so that people could appreciate what you're doing, right? And so this whole experience, I think, has kind of given is what why I'm still here today. It made me stronger, you know, it made me stronger. And, you know, and so and passing that on, it's, you know, it's a challenge, but, you know, it keeps me going. It does.
Thank you so much for those words, Jose. Thank you so much. And I must say that I have been on stage with you and everything has turned out fine because you're there with the heart, with your spirit, giving it all. And that's what matters. And that's what's going to come out. And that's what the audience is going to receive. So keep doing the work. I want to say thank you to Manuela and to Dr. Tom. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you for giving us such a great, for some people, introduction, for others, kind of a refresher and a bigger perspective of what this is, right? How we connect to our own spirituality, to our own power, through our own voice, through movement, through dance, through traditions that have been there forever, that we can really tap into that power and into that knowledge and pass it on. So I am forever grateful for this opportunity. I'm also thanking Ostos Community College, Danza Fiesta, and please stay with us for next time because we're coming back with another panel on Thursday. But for today, Dr. Drum from Bombayo and Manuela Arciniegas from Legacy Women, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Manuela, good seeing you again.